Tuesday 14th. Winds at southeast, a steady gale. By 2 p.m. we got out to the outermost reefs, and just fetched to windward of one of the openings I had discovered from the island. We tacked and made a short trip to the southwest, while the master went in the pinnace to examine the channel, who soon made the signal for the ship to follow, which we accordingly did, and in a short time got safe out. This channel lies northeast half north, 3 leagues from Lizard Island. It is about 1/3 of a mile broad, and 25 or 30 fathoms deep or more. The moment we were without the breakers, we had no ground with 100 fathoms of line, and found a large sea rolling in from the southeast. By this I was well assured we were got without all the shoals, which gave us no small joy, after having been entangled among islands and shoals more or less ever since the 26th of May, in which time we have sailed above 360 leagues by the lead, without ever having a leadsman out of the chains when the ship was under sail, a circumstance that perhaps never happened to any ship before, and yet it was here absolutely necessary. As soon as we had got without the reefs, we shortened sail, and hoisted in the pinnace and longboat, which last we had hung alongside, and then stretched off east-northeast close upon a wind, as I did not care to stand to the northward until we had a whole day before us, for which reason we kept making short boards all night. The large hollow sea we have now got into acquaints us with a circumstance we did not before know, which is that the ship hath received more damage than we were aware of, or could perceive when in smooth water. For now she makes as much water as one pump will free, kept constantly at work. However, this was looked upon as trifling to the danger we had lately made an escape from. At daylight in the morning, Lizard Island bore south by west, distant 10 leagues. We now made all the sail we could, and stood away north-northwest half west, but at 9 we steered northwest half north, having the advantage of a fresh gale at southeast. At noon we were by observation in the latitude of 13 degrees 46 minutes south. The Lizard Island bore south 15 degrees east, distant 58 miles, but we had no land in sight. I should have been very happy to have had it in my power to have kept in with the land, in order to have explored the coast to the northern extremity of the country, which I think we were not far off. For I firmly believe this land doth not join to New Guinea. But this I hope soon either to prove or disprove, and the reasons I have before assigned will, I presume, be thought sufficient for my leaving the coast at this time. Not but what I intend to get in with it again, as soon as I can do it with safety. The passage or channel we now came out by lies in the latitude of 14 degrees 32 minutes south. It may always be found and known by the 3 high islands within it, which I have called the Islands of Direction, because by their means a safe passage may be found, even by strangers in with the main reef, and quite into the main. Lizard Island, which is the northernmost and largest of the 3, affords snug anchorage under the northwest side of it, fresh water and wood for fuel. And the low islands and reefs which lay between it and the main abound with turtle and other fish, which may be caught at all seasons of the year, except in such blowing weather as we have lately had. All these things considered, there is perhaps not a better place on the whole coast for a ship to refresh at than this island. I had forgot to mention in its proper place that not only on this island, but on Eagle Island and on several places of the sea beach in and about Endeavour River, we found bamboos, coconuts, the seeds of some few other plants, and pumice stones, which were not the produce of the country. From what we have seen of it, it is reasonable to suppose that they are the produce of some lands or islands laying in the neighbourhood, most likely to the eastward, and are brought hither by the easterly trade winds. The islands discovered by Quiros lies in this parallel, but how far to the eastward it's hard to say. For although we found in most charts his discoveries placed as far to the west as this country, yet from the account of his voyage, compared with what we ourselves have seen, we are morally certain that he never was upon any part of this coast. Wednesday 15th. Fresh trade at southeast and clear weather. At 6 in the evening, shortened sail and brought to, with her head to the northeast. By this time we had run near 12 leagues upon a northwest half-north course since noon. At 4 a.m. wore and lay her head to the southwest, and at 6 made all sail, and steered west in order to make the land, being fearful of overshooting the passage, supposing there to be one, between this land and New Guinea. By noon we had run 10 leagues upon this course, but saw no land. Our latitude by observation was 13 degrees 2 minutes south, longitude 216 degrees 0 minutes west, which was 1 degree 23 minutes to the west of Lizard Island. Thursday 16th. Moderate breezes at east-southeast and fair weather. A little after noon saw the land from the masthead bearing west-southwest, making high. At 2 saw more land to the northwest of the former, making in hills like islands, but we took it to be a continuation of the mainland. An hour after this we saw a reef between us and the land, extending away to the southward, and, as we thought, terminated here to the northward, abreast of us. But this was only an opening, for soon after we saw it extend away to the northward, as far as we could distinguish anything. Upon this we hauled close upon a wind, which was now at east-southeast, with all the sail we could set. We had hardly trimmed our sails before the wind came to east by north, which made our weathering the reef very doubtful, the northern point of which in sight at sunset still bore from us north by west, distant about 2 leagues. However, this being the best tack to clear it, we kept standing to the northward, keeping a good lookout until 12 at night, when, fearing to run too far upon one course, we tacked and stood to the southward, having run 6 leagues, north or north by east, since sunset. We had not stood above 2 miles to the south-southeast before it fell quite calm. We both sounded now and several times before, but had not bottom with 140 fathoms of line. A little after 4 o'clock the roaring of the surf was plainly heard, and at daybreak the vast foaming breakers were too plainly to be seen, not a mile from us, towards which we found the ship was carried by the waves surprisingly fast. We had at this time not an air of wind, and the depth of water was unfathomable, so that there was not a possibility of anchoring. In this distressed situation we had nothing but Providence and the small assistance the boats could give us to trust to. The pinnace was under repair and could not immediately be hoisted out. The yawl was put in the water and the longboat hoisted out, and both sent ahead to tow, which, together with the help of our sweeps abaft, got the ship's head round to the northward, which seemed to be the best way to keep her off the reef, or at least to delay time. Before this was effected, it was 6 o'clock, and we were not above 80 or 100 yards from the breakers. The same sea that washed the side of the ship rose in a breaker prodigiously high the very next time it did rise, so that between us and destruction was only a dismal valley the breadth of one wave, and even now no ground could be felt with 120 fathom. The pinnace was by this time patched up and hoisted out, and sent ahead to tow. Still we had hardly any hopes of saving the ship, and full as little our lives, as we were full 10 leagues from the nearest land, and the boats not sufficient to carry the whole of us. Yet in this truly terrible situation, not one man ceased to do his utmost, and that with as much calmness as if no danger had been near. All the dangers we had escaped were little in comparison of being thrown upon this reef, where the ship must be dashed to pieces in a moment. A reef such as one speaks of here is scarcely known in Europe. It is a wall of coral rock, rising almost perpendicular out of the unfathomable ocean, always overflown at high water, generally 7 or 8 feet, and dry in places at low water. The large waves of the vast ocean, meeting with so sudden a resistance, makes a most terrible surf, breaking mountains high, especially as in our case, when the general trade wind blows directly upon it. At this critical juncture, when all our endeavours seemed too little, a small air of wind sprung up, but so small that at any other time in a calm we should not have observed it. With this, and the assistance of our boats, we could observe the ship to move off from the reef in a slanting direction, but in less than 10 minutes we had as flat a calm as ever, when our fears were again renewed. For as yet we were not above 200 yards from the breakers. Soon after, our friendly breeze visited us again, and lasted about as long as before. A small opening was now seen in the reef, about 1/4 of a mile from us, which I sent one of the mates to examine. Its breadth was not more than the length of the ship, but within was smooth water. Into this place it was resolved to push her, if possible, having no other probable views to save her, for we were still in the very jaws of destruction, and it was a doubt whether or no we could reach this opening. However, we soon got off it, when, to our surprise, we found the tide of ebb gushing out like a mill stream, so that it was impossible to get in. We, however, took all possible advantage of it, and it carried us out about 1/4 of a mile from the breakers. But it was too narrow for us to keep in long. However, what with the help of this ebb and our boats, we by noon had got an offing of 1½ or 2 miles. Yet we could hardly flatter ourselves with hopes of getting clear, even if a breeze should spring up, as we were by this time embayed by the reef, and the ship, in spite of our endeavours, driving before the sea into the bight. The ebb had been in our favour, and we had reason to suppose the flood which was now made would be against us. The only hopes we had was another opening we saw about 1 mile to the westward of us, which I sent Lieutenant Hicks in the small boat to examine. Latitude observed 12 degrees 37 minutes south. The mainland in sight, distant about 10 leagues. Friday, 17th. While Mr. Hicks was examining the opening, we struggled hard with the flood, sometimes gaining a little, and at other times losing. At 2 o'clock, Mr. Hicks returned with a favourable account of the opening. It was immediately resolved to try to secure the ship in it. Narrow and dangerous as it was, It seemed to be the only means we had of saving her as well as ourselves. A light breeze soon after sprung up at east-north-east, with which, the help of our boats and a flood tide, we soon entered the opening, and was hurried through in a short time by a rapid tide like a mill race, which kept us from driving against either side, though the channel was not more than 1/4 mile broad, having 2 boats ahead of us sounding. Our depth of water was from 30 to 7 fathoms, very irregular soundings and foul ground until we had got quite within the reef, where we anchored in 19 fathoms, a coral and shelly bottom. The channel we came in by, which I have named Providential Channel, bore east-north-east, distant 10 or 12 miles, being about 8 or 9 leagues from the mainland, which extended from north 66 degrees west to southwest by south. It is but a few days ago that I rejoiced at having got without the reef. But that joy was nothing when compared to what I now felt at being safe at an anchorage within it. Such are the vicissitudes attending this kind of service, and must always attend an unknown navigation, where one steers wholly in the dark, without any manner of guide whatever. Was it not from the pleasure which naturally results to a man from his being the first discoverer, even was it nothing more than land or shoals, this kind of service would be insupportable, especially in far distant parts like this, short of provisions and almost every other necessary. People will hardly admit of an excuse for a man leaving a coast unexplored he has once discovered. If dangers are his excuse, he is then charged with timorousness and want of perseverance, and at once pronounced to be the most unfit man in the world to be employed as a discoverer. If, on the other hand, he boldly encounters all the dangers and obstacles he meets with, and is unfortunate enough not to succeed, he is then charged with temerity, and perhaps want of conduct. The former of these aspersions, I am confident, can never be laid to my charge. And if I am fortunate to surmount all the dangers we meet with, the latter will never be brought into question. Although I must own that I have engaged more among the islands and shoals upon this coast than perhaps in prudence I ought to have done with a single ship, and every other thing considered. But if I had not, I should not have been able to give any better account of the one half of it than if I had never seen it. At best, I should not have been able to say whether it was mainland or islands, and as to its produce, that we should have been totally ignorant of, as being inseparable with the other. And in this case, it would have been far more satisfaction to me never to have discovered it. But it is time I should have done with this subject, which at best is but disagreeable, and which I was led into on reflecting on our late dangers. In the PM, as the wind would not permit us to sail out by the same channel as we came in, neither did I care to move until the pinnace was in better repair, I sent the master with all the other boats to the reef to get such refreshment as he could find, and in the meantime the carpenters were repairing the pinnace. Variations by the amplitude and azimuth in the morning, 4 degrees 9 minutes easterly. At noon, latitude observed 12 degrees 38 minutes south, longitude in 216 degrees 45 minutes west. It being now about low water, I and some other of the officers went to the masthead to see what we could discover. Great part of the reef without us was dry, and we could see an opening in it about 2 leagues farther to the southeast than the one we came in by. We likewise saw 2 large spots of sand to the southward within the reef, but could see nothing to the northward between it and the main, On the mainland within us was a pretty high promontory, which I called Cape Weymouth, latitude 12 degrees 42 minutes south, longitude 217 degrees 15 minutes, and on the northwest side of this cape is a bay which I called Weymouth Bay,